Okay, so for this week's reflection, um, I've been going back and forth, and I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to talk about. But um, one of the more interesting things that I've been in a number of discussions that were related to trust and the importance of trust and what happens when we break trust. Um, so, just some interesting observations. Um, being generous, I think, is one of the easiest ways to earn trust. And I was part of a salon over the weekend on this new site that I discovered, and we talked a bit about what it means to build trust, how trust relates to money, um, and kind of how we see things shifting. And there's a number of trends that I've been noticing. Um, so, first of all, I think that there's a natural tendency to start from a place of distrust. And I think this is something that the internet has really taught us to do. And I don't think it's a positive. I think that one of the best things we can do as a society is to start from a place of trust. And it can be a difficult thing to do, especially when you've been burnt before. And, it's one of those things that I think it doesn't come as naturally to a lot of people as maybe it used to. Um, and I think that this global connection that we have now, it has a lot to do with that. And I think a lot of social media has taught us that we do things for the likes. The easiest way to get the likes is to be part of a tribe that's typically pitted directly against another tribe. And so I think we see a lot of polarization, especially like in political arenas, because of this. It's very easy to get emotional reactions, and therefore we've kind of trained ourselves to behave like this. But I think that we need to start consciously focusing on how we can start from a place of trust. And I think a lot of this is being seen in how we're starting to build up smaller communities where I see the trend going kind of away from social media as a whole into these smaller, a lot of times gated communities that have some sort of selection process. Because at least when you're selecting, even if you're being fairly liberal in your selection process in the sense of having it fairly open, um, there tends to be a higher stake in the community because you're part of this community. Everybody in this community is ideally working together. And then I think as communities grow, that trust is harder and harder to build up, or it becomes harder and harder to become part of that community. And large communities have all sorts of I think interesting issues with that. But starting off with people being part of these smaller communities, one of the things we kind of touched on was Dunbar's number, and it's the sense that essentially there's only so many people that you can have like a relatively close relationship with, and it's somewhere in the range of 100 people that an individual can have this kind of relationship with. Um, and beyond that, it tends to get unmanageable, and that's something that I found. I do my best to keep up with a number of different people online, but it's hard to really maintain fairly close relationships with a large number of people. So that's I think that's part of the struggle when we get into these kind of global communities that we start to tend to not think of other people as actual people, and they become just something on the computer screen, and so we lose that touch of humanity. And I feel like that's part of it. But mostly I think it's just the fact that a lot of us have been trained to behave in certain ways by social media, by the interactions we've had online. And so it's interesting to me to see this kind of shift into becoming more trusting, but doing it from a place of deliberate trust in kind of smaller, more selective groups. So anyway, I think we'll see some interesting trends going that way. Um, it was a really cool discussion to be part of, and so yeah, that's kind of the thing to think about this week is just how do we build trust online. Um, Trust and money have a very interesting relationship, because I think that money is essentially built a lot on trust, and maybe more so than we tend to realize. And a lot of companies are really good at getting just enough trust for you to buy their product and then holding on to you after that. And I think that's something we need to fix as well, is this idea of extended commitments where we don't need extended commitments. I feel like one of the things we talked about was how cults behave, and they get you to trust them, and then they make it very, very difficult for you to get out because you become so involved, you become so committed that to lose the cult ends up losing part of yourself. And so that was kind of an interesting discussion that we thought of, that we ended up going down, because of the fact that I think to really give people the choices they need, communities need to let people out easily. Make it easy to join and easy to leave, because people join different communities at different times for different reasons. And sometimes they outgrow those communities, and sometimes, it just the community ends up not being a right fit, and people need to move on. And I found that just as a whole, we tend to focus so much on making people commit to ideas, commit to groups, and then make it very hard to leave. And we do that for a number of reasons. But ultimately, I really do believe that we need to make groups easy in, easy out. We need to be fairly, we need to be selective to a point, but not too selective. Nothing like prescriptive advice, right? And most importantly, we need to start from a place of trust. So anyway, that's kind of my thoughts for the past week or so. And I'll probably post again next week. Thanks for listening.